So the guys start to record, so we can start. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for coming for this session. I hear that some of you like, can I move? That's okay? Okay. Because it will be very hard for me to stay in one place. One small point. Even the organizers put me to the dev track. This session will not be a dev track. It will be a DBA track. It's okay for you? Yeah, more or less? Yeah, I hope you'll survive. Okay. Encryption SQL Server in AD 2016. My name is Tobaisz Koprowski. I came here from Nottingham when I actually live. Originally I'm Polish, so my accent is, of course, a little bit different. How many of you know Russian? More or less. So you can say that my accent is a little bit Russian. Okay. Session 2 up to 20 past 2. We have a slight delay based on some of the technical things, but I will really try to finish on time to give you a chance to be on lunchtime, on lunch on the time, and of course the next sessions, breaks, raffle, and so on and so on and so on. Thank you very much for our sponsors. We have some sponsors here. Pyramid, I saw, Microsoft, even Neil is somewhere here, Nordor. That's okay. About me, I'm an independent consultant, trainer, author of some of the articles, one of the chapters of this fantastic book. Have you ever read this kind of book, this one? MVP Deep Dives? It's a very, very nice book. Very nice because when we wrote the chapters for that, all of the money from this book went for the charity. So we just give them for the kids and so on. Okay. What is the security? Okay, why you attended this session? It's good, yeah, it could be a fun. Okay, it will be a fun. I have some funny points. Even we can play with some of the things here, if you really want. Okay, not really. Okay, so this machine doesn't work anymore. Okay. So what is the security if you can back again? Why are we trying to secure our data? Why it is important? In your opinion, let's discuss a little bit. Stop the wrong people getting it. Mm-hmm. The right people can, yes? That is one of the case. Yeah? So we have a security somewhere, and around we have several different layers, systems, information, infections, control, and so on and so on. Before we go in for the encryption and for some of the parts which we can use, some of the encryption tools which we can use actually in 2016, not only with SQL Server 2016, but generally in the year of 2016, I want to a little bit focus on the security. Is anyone who read materials from the Institute of Security Open Methodologies about open source security testing methodology manual? This is very, very nice document. It's very, very long. It's technical. It's about the creating software more secure. A lot of good practices, a lot of good information, and which is maybe most important, it's free. It's created by community connecting for the security, orienting for the security, and they trying to find a lot of good tools, a lot of good ways to protect our data. When the security provides a form of protection where a separation is created between the assets and the threats. Okay, what is the assets in our environment, in our SQL environment? What is the assets? Data. Yeah? What is the threats? What it could be? Someone stealing data, corrupting data, some of the disgruntled employees. Have you ever met any one of them? Yes? It's you? No, I'm not sure that's no. I meet that person twice. One of them is still in a jail. He's not my friend. He's not even my colleague. He's not even my Facebook friend. Yeah, but he made some of the things. He just corrupt data and make some bad things after, just a moment before when he leaving the company. Okay. Before we go in for the talking about the security, and of course, encryption will be one of the part. When we discuss about the security, we can find some of the different realms of the security. IT realm, for example. Application security, computing security, data security, several other securities aspects, information network, and so on and so on. Which of part of these five, when you're connecting for IT realm, from your perspective, will be your part of your mainly daily job? Data security. What do you do to secure your data? Prevent access. How many of you use encryption? 3 people. Why you use encryption? We have some sensitive data, we need to protect them, or sometimes it's just the regulatory requirements, yes? The governmental institution said, okay, you have that kind of data, you have to secure this, and you should use, for example, encryption. Yeah? Okay. Another one is the physical realm, very, very important now. Airport security, food security, home infrastructure, physical, port, supply chain, school, shopping center, even that. Why that kind of security will be important for us as a DBAs? What do you think? What is the connection with our environment and, for example, airport security? Here in the room is minimum one person which I know, and that guy just travel very, very often. Maybe not that often that he want, but he travel a lot. Sometimes when we travel, we stay at the airports, and we need to work with our customers. We still have 2 hours to our flight. If we have delays, of course, more hours, 6 hours, 7, 12 hours, and so on, and we just sit down somewhere and start to work. Which tools we should use at the airport if we connect to our customer environment? VPNs? Something else? Most of them, the VPNs, yes, the most important. How many of you use this naturally, which is naturally implemented, which is naturally enabled when you start to work with your environment? When you set up your computer, the VPN started automatically, yes? All of the traffic is encrypted. This is one of the very good. Of course, another one which is important is the home security. How you protect your home network against the attacks, against the hackers, against the someone? What do you do? Firewall, okay. Something else? Secure passwords, admin, yes? Something like that, yeah? Maybe MAC filtering. Of course, for home it's a little bit hard because we have a lot of people sometimes. Okay, not all of us, but sometimes we have a lot of people at home. Even we have a guest, visitors. Sometimes they want to use our network. Okay, give me access for internet, I need to check something. It's really hard if we manage our data with access at home, for example, with MAC addresses. The last one, almost the last one, political realm. Homeland security, human, international security, national, public, and so on and so on. How many of you are actually the fans of the fans of football? How many of you are fans of football? Some of you, okay. What happens this week for the fans of football in Sweden? They just cannot simply fly to France because they have a strike on the airlines. And several thousand of people, which they have booked tickets, all of them, they just stay in Sweden. They cannot just go for Sweden for looking the football game, yes? What happens in France, in Marseille, a few days ago? The clash with the very famous England hooligans, yes? And maybe more famous Russian hooligans. Yeah? If in the Marseille, if your data center will be close to this area, what will be the problem? Maybe you cannot get access for that. Yes, maybe your data could be a little bit in a small distance. Of course, the political realms do. Politicians do several things to make our life much nicer. Okay. When we connect for the SQL Server LIM, application security, computing security, data security, information network, home infrastructure, several of them, connecting together as a security for our environment. So, if we want to protect our data, what we can do? The first part could be encryption. Yes. What kind of encryption? What kind of encryption you use? Use transparent data encryption inside the SQL Server. Okay. What is your experience with that? It's easy to manage? Generally, yes. Generally, it's easy to manage. Do you use any other encryption? For example, file encryption, disk encryption, of course, connection encryption for that one, yes? So, if you as a DBA manage the transparent data encryption in SQL Server, who manage the encryption for files or for disk? Operation teams, yes? For which places operation teams have access? They even have access for our SQL Server files, yes? If they really want, maybe they can do something. Maybe, yeah? Okay. Of course, transparent data encryption is nothing new. It's not a brand new functionality. It exists from SQL Server 2008, but now it's available even on Azure, SQL Azure Database, SQL Azure Data Warehouse, even Parallel Data Warehouse. We can encrypt our data with this tool. Give me some example. When was the first time when you got the task? Okay, please encrypt your data. What was your steps? If I give you a task, okay, just encrypt your data because you have some of the data which maybe should be encrypted. What will be your step? How you plan this? Google. Okay, maybe Google is better than MSDN. Sometimes it is. Okay, what next? Setuping. Set up machine dedicated for testing. Very good. What else? Yes. Look after the key. Okay. Certificates. What else? What we're going to encrypt. Exactly. Which kind of data we want to encrypt? Should we encrypt all of our data? It's not a very big problem to encrypt all of the data, but we need to think a little bit about the performance. Yes. So, for example, if we have a lot of data inside our, for example, parallel data warehouse solutions, maybe when we enable encryption for all of the data, even the first one, not all of the statements we can use, of course, not all of the settings which we can use, but maybe will be affected with our performance. Yes, it could be a problem. Transparent data encryption performs real-time, of course, I/O operations and decryption of the data files. We need to remember about the keys and about the certificates. Which kind of keys we have for encryption? Master key, database key, and certificate. Yes. The first point which we should do automatically when we enable encryption, we should make a copy and backup and store somewhere else. Because when we enable encryption starts to encrypting our data, and of course, if something happens with our certificate, with our key, we will not have access for our data. If we lose the key, if we lose the certificates, we will not have access for this data anymore. Where SQL Server store those important files? By default, as a file. Where is default? What is the default location? The default location will be the default location for your SQL Server instance. So generally, the files are in the same place when you have an instance. So it's good for SQL Server for works, but of course it's not good for security for us because we need to protect this in special special way. So this is some of the example. We have our Windows operating system API. We have a SQL Server instance level, and when we create our SQL Server setup, service master key is created and it's stored inside the SQL Server. Next, when we create the master key, we have a our master key for our database, of course, and we have our encryption key, which is created on the process of the creation. And at the end, we have our database encryption key, which of course is responsible for encryption and decryption our data. Have you ever lost your key? No? Not yet. That's very good. That's very good. But sometimes it's happen. Okay. The new functional. Okay. Which version of the SQL Server you use? 2014, 12, 8, 8R2, 2005, still 7. It was a special question for Hugo, but 2000? No. So 2005 is more or less the last option. Yes. Okay. Of course, if you have 2005. Good advice, of course. You can ask the Microsoft, and Microsoft give you advice. Please migrate for the new systems. Sometimes it's not possible. In which place? In which moment? When you have a very, very old legacy application, which is very, very important for us. So, for example, my customer have a my previous customer. They have a special installation of Windows Server 2000, SQL Server 2000. Store on the 9 new racks, HP, just 64 or 74 machines, physical machines, and they don't have any plan for migration. We just work with this, and we just look for this environment, and we never touch this for last 5 or 6 years. They have a special core production system working on COBOL. How many of you are familiar with COBOL? Some of you, yes? It's very, very nice language. When you go with the COBOL, we just stay in COBOL. Yeah, in that case of my customer. Okay. So, of course, it's not new. We need to look for the encryption, decryption, and of course for parts of our encryption. We can use passphrase, which is less secure. We can use asymmetric key, strong protection, poor performance. Symmetric key, good performance, strong enough protection, and certificate strong protection and good performance. Okay, what will be strong enough protection in your case? What it could be? All of this came from Microsoft MSDN, of course. That's always funny when you read some of the part of the documentation. Is what it could be a strong enough protection. Yes? New functionality, which is important and it's very interesting from SQL Server 16. How many of you encrypt your backup? Yeah, if you use encryption, probably you encrypt the backup. But if you don't use encryption, how many of you encrypt your backup files? In some ways, even using third-party tools. Why we need to do that? Why we need to remember not only about the encryption in our database, because maybe sometimes it's not necessary to use encryption. Maybe we don't have even enough resources to use encryption. But we still should remember about encrypting backup. What do you think why? Yes, someone just can start to play with this data. Yes, if they get access, if they get file, they can easily grab this data and look inside for this data. It's very, very easy using simple tools. With the backup, if you use the backup encryption, a SQL Server takes non-encrypted backup data, encrypt data before writing to disk. Compression is performed, it's a mistake, on the backup data first. Then encryption is applied to the compressed data, and of course, it's support for Azure. That is very, very good functionality, that we can easily encrypt our backup file, and we can sleep much better. I will show you later why keeping the backup encrypted is important. Not very big. Again, when we use encryption, we should avoid any other operation when we set up this. When we use with the encryption normally on fly, there is some of the performance. I will show you some. I have some slides about the performance a little bit later. It's not very big issue with the performance, up to 2% if we have a standard environment. If you have something special, like a parallel data warehouse, of course, that levels of the performance will be different. Depends on the big size of the files and so on. Depends on the algorithms which we use. And I will show you later some of the table about the algorithms. Encryption options include encryption algorithm, certificate, and asymmetric key. Only asymmetric key resident in AKM, which is supported. Multiple algorithms up to IAS 256. Oh, it will be great, 2000. Okay. Do you know which algorithms you use for your encryption when you use TDA? Do you remember? It was an issue when you created your encryption. It should be an issue. Because different algorithms, you will get, of course, different performance, but the most important, you get different security. Some of the old algorithms are still supported because it's the legacy algorithms, but they shouldn't be used, like RC4, for example. RC4 is a very weak algorithm. You can just use Xbox and 20 minutes to take data from encrypted data from RC4. It's very weak. Manageable with PowerShell, of course, Management Studio, and so on. Very important, asymmetric key or certificate must be backup up. Location must be different than backup location, and no restore without asymmetric key or certificate because we don't have access for data. Sometimes, okay, what is your default backup location? Try to remember from your where you store your backup by default. Yes, by default, backup is stored in the same place like a SQL Server instance. In the same place, we store our certificates and key. So generally, if something happens with our instance, if we not set up in different way, we lose everything. Yes. How many of you set up in this different way? Probably most of you. Maybe some of you are a little bit shy, yeah, but I'm almost sure that all of you set up in different ways. Encryption algorithms define the data transformations that cannot be easily reversed, including DES, triple DES, free key, RC2, RC4, 128 bits, DES6, and so on, up to 256 AAS. Beginning from SQL Server 2016, all algorithms other than that one, okay, so that as a minimum, are depreciated. To use older algorithms, which is not recommended, you must to set up database compatibility level for 12. Yes. It's very important when you start to plan your encryption environment. And of course, strong encryption generally consumes more CPU resources than weak encryption. This is part of your answer for your question. If we want to use very intensive encryption, of course, we have a performance issue. Have you ever encrypt your backup file using third-party application? Like, I don't know, for example, 7-zip and something else, something like that. What is the issue when you just, for example, packing your file or use encryption for the CPUs? Top of the tops, yes? Sometimes even that you can get information, oh, your process just stopped in the middle because there is no more resources, which system need for that. So we need to consider which option will be better for us. A little bit stronger encryption, but the performance will be issue, or we can go with the other is. Long keys generally yield stronger encryption than short keys. The similar with the passwords. How long your passwords are? Eight, okay, as a minimum, okay. How many of you use passwords like 40 characters? Okay, for application, where the passwords are written directly, okay, some of you, yes? But normally as a human being, probably not. But can we use that long passwords? What we can do? If you know, because I'm from Poland, I'm not very experienced with Shakespeare. I have my own poets in Poland. Okay, I had the poets in Poland. All of them dies, similar like Shakespeare. But if you are familiar with Shakespeare, you can take part of the poems, first part of the poems. It could be a password, yes? It's very easy to remember, if you know. Yeah? Very hard to guess. What is it? Asymmetric encryption is weaker than symmetric encryption using the same key length, but is relatively slow. Long, complex passwords are stronger than short passwords. Of course, everything is natural. If you are encrypting a lot of data, you should encrypt the data using asymmetric key, using a symmetric key, and encrypt the symmetric key with the asymmetric key. So we need to mix if the performance will be issue for us. Encrypted data cannot be compressed, but compressed data can be encrypted. So that's the way that we have a new functionality in SQL Server 16. Yes? A very, very nice work with that. Okay, regarding with the DES algorithm. Triple DES cipher is a 192-bit keys. This DES-X algorithm is not provided, even each not that bad. Symmetric key created with algorithm triple DES, free key used triple DES with 192 bits key, and just with the triple DES without free key use 128 bits key. It was any time an issue for you that you have to choose which encryption key you use, which level of algorithms you use. What was the reason that you choose? Which algorithm you use? Mm-hmm. Why? We need to back for some of the even games from the school, and just to need to go for the maths. Yes? Okay, which algorithms will be good for us, and so on and so on. This is a very nice table. If we use a different encryption key, we have, of course, mode name, we have a generates of bits, which we need to use for encryption, and we have effective key strengths. So, for example, it works or not? It works. RC4, 40 bits, okay, zero security. Actually, zero security. But if we look for the performance, triple DES free key, like that one, the encryption generates additional 168 bits. Effective key strength is 112. It's not that very, very, very good. If you look for that one, it's a little bit better, but we have a less bits added for our encryption. So we need to, again, we need to consider that if we use encryption, we need to consider the space for our data. Because when we use encryption, additional bits are added to encrypt the data. RSA, for example, 124. Even they generate a lot of bits here for using this encryption, but effectiveness of this is just 80. So it's not that strong encryption key, encryption algorithm which we can use. Elliptic curve starts to be more interesting because even we have here just a very, very good effective 192. We have not that many bits. Look for that one. Comparing this one, 192 effective key strength. How many bits extra we have for encryption? Yes, very, very huge number. Yes. When we normally encrypt data, our encryption add the special bits for all of our data because they need to know how to decrypt and encrypt the data. So they add the special information per row. Yes, more often is per row. Yes. So we need to consider which of the version we'll use because we have a special information when we just next check our tables. We have a special information that we use this kind of encryption, and of course those information how to encrypt and decrypt data are stored in our database. Restrictions. Following operation is not allowed during initial database encryption. dropping file from file group or database. Okay, dropping database is not allowed. This is very, very nice. When you start to use encryption, in the moment of initialization of encryption, this is one moment when you cannot drop database. Very good to know when you cannot drop database. Taking the database offline, detach database, of course, and transition. Following operation conditions will prevent create database encryption key, alter database encryption key, drop database encryption key. For example, the database is read-only and has a read-only file group. Alter database command is executing. So we cannot do something with our database when we start to play with encryption, we enable encryption, and we cannot do something with encryption when we do something else. That's natural. Okay, this is one of them. Dynamic data masking. How many of you heard about that? Have you ever used this for some reasons? Or did you consider to use this? Why it could be good? With dynamic data masking, we can just set up mask for our data and keep them not visible directly for the users which don't have rights. So for example, by default, we have several masks which are implemented by default. Full masking according to the data types and designated fields. So for example, we can use XS or fever XS if the size of the fields is less than 4 characters, for example. We can use 0 value for the numeric data types. We can use that kind of mask for any date time data types. We can use, for example, part of them for the XML. We can use empty value for special data types like times type table, hierarchy ID, GUID, and so on and so on. What could be a reason that we want to protect our data using masking? For which case scenario? Credit cards. One of the best case scenario which we normally use, or some kind of other information. For example, credit cards. For example will be when we use default mask, our credit card number will be visible just, for example, with last 4 digits. All of them will be not visible for the users which don't have a rights. Which user always have a rights? Sysadmin, basically. Yes, sysadmin always have a rights for that. Social security number. This mask is created for United States market. Of course, in UK we have a national insurance number, which is a little bit different, but we can build our mask, we can create our mask and use this, for example, for securing national insurance number. Email. It's used very, very often. So, for example, when you forgot your password for some of the application in the website, you're just trying to recover your password, just remind me my passwords, you just got information, okay, put your email address, and you see your email address, for example, in that format, yes? So, is masking, so application don't see this, but you as a user remember, okay, this is my I don't know, something.com, for example. And we remember what is our email, so we can easily use this. Random number. Masking methods which generates a random number according to selected boundaries, different. And of course, custom text. So for example, we could use some of the prefix, we could use our paddings with the data here, we can use different suffix and so on, so we can change our data for the visibility for the users, and they can easily data will be easily protected. Users will not see this. Let's play a little bit. How many of you are developers? Okay, when you use Visual Studio, use black or white? White. It could be black, or I need to change. It does not matter now? Okay. Just asking. Okay. So, I have a SQL Azure database server in the cloud. And I have an AdventureWorks database, which of course have some of the natural information and natural data. I will try to connect for this machine. Okay. Come on. We'll see. Oh, can even choose this one. Okay, just in here. Okay. Just a moment. How many of you, how many of you use Azure? Okay, only one. That's okay. If you start to use Azure, one of the important points will be encrypt connection to Azure, which is not set up by default. You should just encrypt this, and it will be encrypted with Azure connections. How many of you use this functionality for your SQL Server on premise? No one. So generally, when I connect now from my management studio to your SQL Server, to my SQL Server instance, my traffic is not encrypted. What we can do to protect this, to avoid this problem, which is a very, very big problem? What we need to do? How many of you use SSL in your company? So call to the security guys and say, okay, give me a certificate for my SQL Server instances. Add the certificate and next use encryption. Very, very easily. If you have implemented SSL, so the PKI, any kind of certificate authority in your organization, you can easily use this. If you don't have, you need to buy the certificate or just keep the connection unencrypted. How many of you use custom color? This is a very, very nice feature. It's very, very old, very, very helpful. I just want to show you. Okay. So encrypt connection. One more question. How many of you click here? Yes, it's really nice functionality, yes? Remember my password, especially if the password is a little bit stronger, 45 characters from Shakespeare poems. Yeah, okay. Let's check. I need to sign in, of course. What is the problem? Okay. What is the reason to enable JavaScript on server when you work? There is no reason, of course. On the client machine, even it's not that good option, yes? It's too complicated now for me to enable Java in that machine, so I can use different option. I can use that option. Do you remember the name of the server? It was SQL Day. Okay. So let's go for a moment. Do you have any plans to play with Azure? Do you have any plans in your companies to play with Azure, to stay? Do you do something like testing now? Some checking functionalities, something like that? Okay. I'm just asking because I want to show you some part of this security features based on this Azure functionality. I don't know how long it will happen. I can even try to check here. Should be a little bit better. The password is not very complicated. Of course, I need to sign in. Why I need to sign? What do you think? Security. Something specific? It's a firewall. Each time when I connect to Azure from different locations, I have a different IP address. Each time I need to set up the firewall rules. Actually, I can do this directly using JavaScript and Management Studio, and I can set up this like that one. In the other ways, I need to log into the Azure portal and set up firewall rules from the Azure portal, and next I will have access for the connections. Okay, in progress, and I have a connection for my SQL Azure instance, which, as I see, is changed now for number 13. Yesterday was 12. Tables, sales, credit card, select to add Townsend row. Sorry? Yes, this, yeah. I didn't set up special special performance for this. Just okay. So we have a credit card numbers in the clean text, yes? So nothing special. Each of the administrators have access for this kind of data, or we can use different options, but generally administrators have access for this data. That's okay. What we can do next? And I need to connect for okay. Still Adventure works. Come on, Management Studio, be nice. Okay. So we saw that our standard user as administrator, because I have been connected as administrator, normally have access for this kind of data. When we back here, when we look for our AdventureWorks database, here is the dynamic data masking option. Not that one. Yeah, okay. So we have some of the mask predefined by Microsoft, of course, and we have a sales credit card number. So we can easily add this mask, save, successfully saved. And now when we click again, we should have one mask enabled. Yes? So we can expect that our user, standard user, when he asks about our data, they will get that kind of data. What we need to do next, of course, we need to set up this user. In the master DB on this SQL Azure server, SQL Azure instance, we need to create a login reader with password. principal reader alert exists. That's okay. So we need to grant the reader. For reader user, we need to grant, for the login reader, we need to create a user reader user. And next, inside the target database, so in the Active Directory, in the AdventureWorks, we need to add this user and give them privileges. So we need to connect again as an administrator. But this time for this database. Why I need to do that instead of changing this? Normally when you work with databases, you use this functionality, yes? Or use master, use something. When we play with Azure, we need to create a separate connection for this. So we cannot just simple switch. Okay. Yes, this is a specific for the Azure databases. All of the time when we need the statement to change the database, use master, use AdventureWorks, use something, it's not working in Azure generally. So we need to create a separate connection. Okay, so we have that one. So now we can, on that database, we can. No, please, Redgate, no. I know that Redgate is great. You have this sometimes on the production hours, yes? Your update is ready, just click and download or restart your machine, yes? Okay. Execute. What next? We have enabled dynamic data masking on our Azure. We now set up all of the permissions for our users. The third part is to check if it works or not. So, again, connect with this database, with this connection as a reader for AdventureWorks. As you see, the color is a little bit different. And the question is, which kind of password I used? Not that one. It's terrible, yes? That's the reason maybe I used that one. That's the reason why we always use remember password. Right? Okay, connect, please. What other option could be? Come on. P-A-S-S-V-O-R-D. No, what could be? What you think? What could be a problem? That's an option. That's an option. That's an option. Maybe do something like that. Create reader 2. From login reader 2. And from reader 2, we still have. Sorry, some typo, yes? Okay, let's check again. We need to do this where, okay, we are on the master. Execute, reader 2. Grant public access. Execute. Create user. That's okay. Let's check. try to do our work as simple as possible. So now we should add. That will be okay? What we need to do next? Sorry? Mm-hmm. We have it. That one. That one. Great. I said you expected some fun. It was funny a little bit. Okay, let's back and adventure works. And now here, everything should. Why not? That's okay. Okay, let's check one more time. Reader 2. Password. Colors, okay. Connect. You know, sometimes even we work with something very, very simple. We just stuck. Yeah. Okay. Tables, credit card, and it works, of course. If we set up everything correctly, it will work. Of course, when someone just connects to our Azure services, what that person can do, if they have, of course, privileges, they can easily delete that mask. Yes? Okay, but I don't want to. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. You will not see this data. Yeah, you can do some of the statements with this data, so you can manipulate this data. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, when you play with the too many machines. Okay. So, for example, I will not create this one now, but when we normally use this, you need to create a master key encryption, master key decryption, and create certificate, and so on. So there is some of the names. What could be very important issue here? If you use that kind of password, how many of you use password generator? It's very good for generating passwords, yes? Can I have one of them? No, probably not. Delete saves Google Apps. No. Okay. What will be the issue here? Do you set up something specific when you use password generator? What kind of signs, what kind of characters should be forbidden in SQL Server passwords? Mm-hmm. What kind of them? If you create the password, okay, this is more or less strong, that's okay. Small letters, capital letters, numbers, that's okay. But if we add, for example, here, that kind of characters, you see? Of course, we cannot use that character in our password. Sometimes it's happening that some of our administrators use very, very complicated passwords, put them to our SQL Server, and it just simply doesn't work. Yes. So we need to remember about the excluding some of the characters from this. Okay, so we have a standard procedure like create master key, create certificate, backup certificate. C is only for testing purposes, of course. In my case, it's E somewhere else on the separate partitions, for example. So backup certificate with some passwords. As you see, here is a different passwords like that one, of course, and so on and so on. Take a backup and do everything else. Is it hard? No, it isn't that hard. If we just switch here, we have a transparent data encryption enabled inside the Azure services, for example, even for SQL Azure database. So I can just click 1 and 2, and now my database starts to be encrypted. Of course, it's a little bit time because it's some of the megabytes of the database, but not that long. And now my data, even I will connect from my management studio from different options, different places, different applications, my data are encrypted. When I take a backup of this, my data is encrypted. What is disadvantage for this? What it could be a disadvantage? Because probably you don't know because you not play with Azure that much. But if you start to play, you will discover some of the points. Where are the certificates and encryption key? Where they are physically? At the Microsoft Data Center. Somewhere connected of course with our database, with our SQL Server instance. We don't have any chance to manage this. They are managed by Microsoft. And in that, of course, they use strongest security levels and so on. That could be an issue if, for example, some of you said, okay, but I don't trust Microsoft that much. But in the other ways, if you play with different databases, most of you use SQL Server database, yes? So you have a little bit trust relationship with Microsoft, yes? Because you still use this product. Even Microsoft is completely not responsible for how the product works, yes? Have you ever situation that your server crashed and you lose some data and you try to get some compliance from Microsoft? Do you know what kind of compliance you can ask? Have you ever read EULA agreement? Agreement when you install SQL Server? The responsibility for Microsoft, okay, what is the cost for enterprise license? What is the responsibility for Microsoft? $250. It's written directly in the agreement. Yeah? Okay, so my data is encrypted now, and when I can of course leave this. I can just show you that if I look for my other instances here, as you see, that one database is encrypted. I can even easily see this in my Azure portal. Okay. So this is dynamic data masking. Very, very nice feature. Very good. Row level security. We have a limited time, so I'll just need to skip a little bit more. Row level security. What it could be? We have a dynamic data masking when we mask some part of data based on our filters. Again, we can use another functionality, row level security, to mask some specific kind of data. What could be example? If we have a nurses, for example, in a hospital, for which data they have access about the patients? The right department, yes? So for example, if you want to protect that, for example, in our hospital, just the specific nurses have access for all of the data, but specific others have access only for patient's number, ID number 4567 or something, we can use that kind of functionality to set up, for example, restricting access to financial data based on an employee's region and role. So we have a lot of data, we have international company, but we want to protect that. For our data, only users who works in London office, they will have access, for example, for some kind of financial data. If they are from Glasgow, How is anyone from Glasgow? No? So if they are from Glasgow, because we don't understand them very, very well, we not give them access. Yes? So we can set up in that way. And of course, we have different options. Hospital, different cases. Hospital create a security policy that allows nurses to view data rows for their own patient only. Bank can create a policy to restrict access for rows financial data based on employee's business division or based on the employee's role. Multi-tenant applications, the same. See, for example, if we have a help desk, if we support our services for our different customers, we can set up this functionality to give the specific customers access only for their index on the day data, on, for example, on the help desk. They don't see any other data for the other customers. We have some predicates, filter predicate, certainly filtering the rows available on the read operation, select, update, and delete. And block predicates, explicitly block write operations after insert, after update, before delete, to violate the predicate. And of course, we can set up this in a different role options. Block predicates affect all write operations. Filter predicates are applied while reading data. So depends on what our user wants to do. Okay, what our user can do, we can select different filters for them to against the write, or for example against the read of data. How many of you users have only read-only access? Many of them, yes? They don't have a privileges to write. So we can simply enable this and use this, and of course, for our purposes. And there are some of the permissions, some of the information about the permissions for row-level security when we can set up these permissions. Best practice, highly recommended to create a separate schema for the row-level security objects when we have a predicate function and security policy. This subject is very, very popular now, probably. How many of you heard about that? Oh, not that popular. Not that popular. Okay. Another functionality from SQL Server 16 is always encrypted. This is a case when we have, of course, our data, and we set up encryption via our application that, for example, our social security number will be replaced by hash or some other predicates which we set up by the ciphertext to not allow to the people, to not allow even application to see this kind of data. We still can manipulate data. We still, of course, can work so that simple application can easily use this data, but application will not see this data. Again, social security numbers, private health care data, credit card information, any kind of information which will be important. Is the salary a sensitive information? It's, for example, when I apply, if I applied somewhere in UK to the new position, looking for the advertisement, I will get information. What will be my salary? For example, I don't know, 40,000 pounds per year. So it's not a very sensitive information. On Iceland, this information is completely not sensitive. Every of the citizens can easily look in the special registry what is the annual income of their neighbors. It's not a sensitive information. Yeah? In Poland, it's very, very sensitive. Even I don't know how much, what is the salary of my colleagues which we work on the same table. Everything is hidden. So we can use these options for encrypt our data, and they will be always encrypted. So data will be manipulated by applications, but even we have some access for this, that we don't have access for data which we encrypt. So the typical scenarios when you have a client and on data premises. So for example, customer has a client application and SQL Server board running on-premise, and we need, for example, we need to store some of the data in the plain text value, and of course we need to encrypt this to protect. another options, of course, client on-premise with data in Azure, and of course, client and data are in Azure. So in the different options, different location of our data, we can set up on completely different ways. Very important, when we select our encryption, we need to set up deterministic or randomized encryption. The difference is huge. Randomize, use a method that encrypts data in less predictable manner. Randomized encryption is more secure but prevents equality searches, grouping, indexing, and join on encrypted columns. If we want to do those functionality, we can use deterministic encryption, which is a little bit less secure. Okay, which could be a little bit less secure. So we need to again decide which options will be better for us. And when we create that one, we just use the column master key and column encryption key, which is created automatically on the process of creating. And next, our data will be created. We need to remember about the permissions, alter any column master key, alter any column encryption key, view any column master key definition, and view any column encryption key definition. And based on our different scenario, like a key management, so for example, querying encrypted columns, if you want to query our data, so get some data, we need to give the permissions like view any column master key definition for that case. If we want to, and of course the second one, view any column encryption key definition, if you want to query our encrypted column. We have some limitations for that. So for example, cannot alter a column and make it encrypted. Must add new column and add import data. It could be a disadvantages, but again, security or easy life. We need to consider two options as always. Queries must be passed by the property type parameters, for example, SQL command, SQL parameter. Ad hoc queries against data will raise an exception. Currently only supported ADO.NET as a part of framework 4.6. How many of you use SharePoint? SharePoint. Which version? 13 or 2013 or 2010? 2010. If you use 2010, if you have a sensitive data in SharePoint, if you have an obligation to encrypt this data, if you want to use this across whole of your environment, you cannot use always encrypted for your SharePoint data, because for SharePoint 2010, only .NET 4.5 is supported. So depends on different application which you have inside your environment, you need to plan your encryption, your security features which you want to use. About the performance, and I just show you something else. For example, if we just use our connections, we have a local and remote connections, we have a normal data, and we have a normal compress. Here we have again with remote normal data and normal and compressed data. And here we have an encryption and even encryption and compress. So you see about the performance which you ask. Is it a significant data? Of course, it's a very, very big difference here between, for example, local data without encryption and without compression. Okay, but generally between using just encryption or encryption and compression, it's not that big issue. But if we use just encryption here and not use encryption here, it could be a significant. So again, for the select time, again, local and remote, normal and normal compress, and encryption and non-encryptions. As you see, a little bit different. Depends on which functionality we use. If we use just encryption without the compression, it's not that huge difference. Or maybe it's a huge difference from your perspective. What do you think? Maybe I'm wrong. Is it a huge difference? Not that much. Always will be a difference if we just use encryption and non-encryption or compression and non-compression. That difference will be always. Space used. As I told you, when we use encryption, we're adding special bits for our data, because our SQL Server need to know which encryption they use and so on, which algorithms. So normal and just the standard encryption. The difference on the space is huge. In that case, you need to consider which of the algorithms you use for using encryption. We use, for example, transparent data encryption. By default, for the Azure is a IAS 256. That's okay. But you need to consider this. Okay, this is not very big issue. Encryption and just encryption and compression, not very big issue. So it's not a very big problem. I want to show you one more thing. So, for example, if you have our database like AdventureWorks here, so for example, table, like for example, I don't know, it could be sales again, credit card. Encrypt columns, and we have a wizard for enabling always encryption. Next, we can select the columns, for example, credit card type and credit card number. We need to choose encryption type, so it could be deterministic or randomized. We can use different if you want. What do you think? What will be the result for performance if we use different encryption type for the same table? It could be a little bit part of the performance issue. Yeah, that's okay. And next, we can just no new column encryption is required. Don't need to configure a master key because I configured this before. Normally, here we create the master key, and I know that one person absolutely use this, but how many of the other people use PowerShell? Some of you, yes. We can just here process to finish, or we can generate PowerShell script to run later. So in that case, we can just use, for example, London version 2. And now it's saved. It's not happened yet, it's just saved. I just want to back for a moment to show you, for example, customer. Again, encrypt columns. Next. Person ID, for example, I don't know, account number. Choose the type, deterministic, and deterministic. Next. Process to finish now. Finish. Haha. What is the problem? Especially if you have customers with different languages, sometimes could be very interesting that you get some errors, and sometimes it could be very, very, very funny. Okay, going to finish. This is the how it looks like in the PowerShell. Of course, it's not executed now, as you see some errors, but generally, if you have that script generated from the always encrypted, you can use this for your future references after that. So you can, for example, create this functionality, take the script, going for the security officers and check, okay, look, do you want to protect this kind of data? That's okay. So let's do something. And of course, you have a full access for this. Okay. Any questions? Except when the lunch will be. It will be soon. Yes. Yes. Okay. Inside your company, it's managed by the someone, of course. What will be the specific question? It's absolutely awesome.
Really?
Really. You need to have someone who have a knowledge how to manage the certificates.
Put someone on. As a DBA, I don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
But I've got him doing it.
Yes. You need to have some money to build the certificate. Of course, to buy the certificates from some of the companies. And after that, you can create a lot of functionality, not only for the SQL Server, not only for applications, not only for signing emails. So if you invest this for the certificate, if you invest once, you can use this for several different options. Okay, the last part, and we go in for the break. Hope that video will play. What do you think about Edward Snowden? I see, good guy. Okay. How he take a data? Does anyone know? Okay, because he just take a data, yes? Okay.
Let me ask you about Edward Snowden. I realize you can't tell us what he got, but do you feel now that you know what he got? Yes. And was it a lot? Yes. How did it happen? Didn't you learn your lesson from the Bradley Manning case that people aren't supposed to be able to plug stuff into your computers and just download it? So the issue here is, many of you may already know that this leader was a system administrator and ran the SharePoint account in NSA Hawaii. And so his responsibility was to move data. And as a system administrator, he also had access to thumb drives and other tools. So what we had is the person who was given the responsibility and the trust to do this job betrayed that responsibility and trust and took this data. Now, I know Dr. Carter talked about some ways of doing it too personal.
This is a very, very long interview, just 40-something minutes. What is important? Where is my presentation? Okay. He, as a system administrator for SharePoint with the full privileges, responsibility was to moving securely data from one data center on Hawaii to another data center on Hawaii. And he just moved the data several times. Once, he make a copy. Why he was able to do that? Because the data was not encrypted. Even we think that even that organization like NSA and others, they are very, very secure. Many times they are not. Okay, maybe now they are a little bit more, focus a little bit more. It's very, very nice because it's just for the SharePoint, from SharePoint point of view. So the SharePoint world know this interview very, very well. Yeah. So if you have that kind of functionality, that kind of solutions in your company, SharePoint generally exists in SQL Server. So from my perspective, SQL Server is most important than SharePoint application. In that case, you have chance to encrypt this data, to protect, to take a data from this place to another and make a copy inside. Because if the data will be encrypted, even he has a high privileges of administrator of SharePoint, but not on SQL Server. So he don't have access for the encryption key. Yes? In that case, he cannot just decrypt the data and make something. Okay, short summary. If you never trust this, start to play with encryption. It's not that hard. It's even more fun if you make some mistakes, typos, and so on. You can use Azure SQL Database for testing. If you are developers, if you have access for MSDN, you can easily have access for Azure. If not, go for the Microsoft boot, ask Andrew about the free code, and probably he will support you for that case. Even you can play for 1 month for free. Download SQL Server 16 CTP and play today, not tomorrow, or maybe tomorrow. And get free SQL Server 2016 Developer Editions, because you know that Developer Editions is free for 16 and for 14. Yes? So you can easily play with that. Some links for the security parts and for the encryption, and security. Okay. I will be here for next couple of minutes or maybe even hours. I don't know yet. But you can find me on Twitter. If you want to discuss more, we can discuss after the session. Thank you very much.